Welcome to the Diverse Minds podcast, where we give you the tips, tools, and techniques you need to be a mentally healthy and inclusive leader. Each week, you'll hear about a variety of topics linked to mental health, well-being, and diversity that will enhance both your professional practice and personal well-being. Welcome to the 199th episode of the award-winning Diverse Minds podcast. And this month's theme is all about men's health and attitudes in society. And today we're focusing on failing forward. And to join me in doing this is Nana Parry. Nana is a serial entrepreneur that uses his expertise in customer insights to build businesses. He is the founder of Tectonic, a research firm that helps companies understand their customers in extreme detail, working with individual startups all the way to FTSE 250, with clients in 12 different countries. He also runs a venture studio, helping large corporations create new businesses from scratch, and has lectured business students at the likes of Imperial College London, UCL, London Business School, and Capital Enterprise. Prior to his journey as a founder, Nana worked for tech companies like Fujitsu and Rackspace, delivering multi-million-dollar projects and running large teams. Nana has also raised multiple investment rounds for his different ventures himself, and his aim is to continue to create assets of value and help as many people as he can along the way. So Nana, a huge welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good. I'm so happy to have you here. And as you will have heard, I read out your bio, but I think it's really lovely for listeners to hear what you're working on at the moment.
Yeah, sure. So I'm currently the founder of a company called Tectonic, as you kind of mentioned, helping businesses understand the needs of their customers. Also working with a consultancy called Elmarks, who run a venture studio. So basically helping companies build new businesses, looking a lot at helping organizations who are in the mental health space or in the sustainability space understand the needs of their customers and figure out ways to build social businesses, but in a profitable way, which I think is really, really important. And yeah, trying to figure out what my next big plans are. We talked about, as a team, we talked about a lot of stuff going on in the AI space. As scary as it is, it could also be a great opportunity for lots of businesses as well. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
So exciting. And of course, we met when you were delivering a session for Hatch, which is the business accelerator I got accepted on and have been taking part in 2023. So lovely to have more time to speak to you, Nana. So really, really great. So obviously you worked for these amazingly big companies like Fujitsu and Rackspace. So how did you then decide, I'm going to take the jump, I'm going to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, good question. So back when I was studying actually in Manchester University, I realized that I didn't really know what I wanted to do because I got bored quite easily. And I ended up working for Fujitsu in a kind of project management role. And very fortunately, I ended up working for the CEO of the company quite quickly. And he was running obviously a multi-billion pound business, having lots of different meetings, helping lots of different people. And I kind of realized, oh, I want that for myself one day, but actually on my own terms, because I didn't feel like, especially, being open, being a Black person coming into a lot of senior roles, sometimes it creates some difficulties or some kind of different energy. So I thought actually I can do things on my own terms. So save some money and decided to just quit the job and see what would happen. Obviously ran out of money very quickly because I had no idea what I was doing. But I loved the buzz and the challenge of it. My personality is one where just love to do difficult things and say like, wow, I've done it and achieved. So that was the main beginning of the journey, and then started to interact with lots of people doing very ambitious things themselves, and just starting to realize that, wow, it's a really great skill set to be able to take something from my head and turn it into something of value that people want. And I do think it is a skill that can be learned, providing you have the ability, I guess, to reflect and learn as you go.
And I started laughing. My mute was on when you said about you someone who gets bored, because I'm exactly the same. And I was talking to another entrepreneur and she said, we've got shining magpie syndrome, haven't we? Where we go,
yeah, exactly.
Oh, that looks good over there. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about failing forward, because I remember when you came to Hatch, you said you talked about you tried things and you quote unquote failed, or things didn't work out. So what does the term failure mean to you?
Yeah, so I think the term failure means, at least in the entrepreneurial sense, a bit of a rite of passage. And some of the things that I've learned from a lot of mentors on my journey has been, what's the worst that could happen? Like try and get that, if you think about you haven't done something before, like you're not a heart surgeon, you're not um doing something where people's lives are at stake in that way. So I've always used that as a comforter in some ways for me to be a bit brave about the things that I do, and recognize that no one in the history of anything that has done anything for the first time has done it perfectly. It's highly unlikely that's the case. So recognizing that I'm not going to do it perfectly, it's okay. But more important than that is being able to understand the parts that I've got wrong. And then how do I apply that experience to do better next time? And when I often think about different sports people, and you may have heard some of these quotes around, Michael Jordan, one of the most successful in the game of basketball, but missed X number of shots. So try and use that as a metaphor. And I think on the other side as well, one of the funny things about failure is in comparison to other people. And at least in my experience, some of the time, people sometimes really want you to be successful because they love you and they appreciate you doing something risky. But sometimes other people don't want you to be successful because they don't necessarily want you to invalidate some of the decisions that they may have made. So I think one of the things there is like recognizing who is in your circle, and them knowing that as you continue to grow, you will fail, you will get things wrong, but you've got people that will kind of support you and back you along the way, emotionally and mentally as well.
Oh, that's that quote that you just said. It was so, so helpful when you said there are people who don't want you to succeed because inadvertently they don't want you to invalidate the choices they've made. That's a
Yes.
very helpful way of thinking about it. And I
Mhm.
think that can often happen with family members. It's not
Yeah.
conscious. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. No, definitely not conscious. It's there's this thing that bubbles up inside of them, I think, that's like, oh, they wish they could have done this or could have done that. And in most cases, they probably could have. But at the same time, it's also about everyone's got their own journey, and no journey is better or lesser than anyone else's. I think the key thing, at least from my point of view, is recognize, like, if you invest time in understanding yourself and your needs and what makes you tick and what doesn't, it just brings you closer to a path that makes more sense for you. And you need people around you that understand that's what you're doing, and you don't need people around you who don't understand that, because the journey is already really hard as it is.
Mm, yeah, thank you, Nana. And what about this idea about men and men's roles and how men should?
Mm,
Because the thing about failure is, I think in UK society, global North society, I think it's part of the research that's been done on white dominant norms is perfection is key. So there's
mm,
often not room to make mistakes. And for me, one of the biggest challenges, and you're going to laugh when I say this, was leaving an organization where I had an at imperial.ac.uk email address. And I thought no one's going to
right.
want to know me if I don't have that email address. And we
Interesting.
build these stories, don't we, in our head? So, yeah, what about this idea in society and men and being successful? And when you quote unquote fail or things don't go right first time,
Mhm.
what are the ways in which you kind of had to push against that societal, the societal assumptions?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I'm trying to bring it to life through an example. So when uh being in the school system, as you kind of mentioned, you end up going down this route of, you know, at least in my world at the time, it was, if you're not getting A's and B's, then you're basically not, worth it. Even in the sense of some classes at school, teachers were trying to get me to drop out of classes because I was messing up their scores. So I think, and being someone from a minority background and looking at peers, who maybe had more resources or maybe had more confidence, I would say, actually, especially externally in terms of their extrovertism, in terms of how they communicated. Um, I really felt like there was a period of my life where I felt like I couldn't be as good as them, because I wasn't able to act in a way that society felt that's what success looked like. And then I think probably it was my experience with my mentor, who was male, but I also have um, a coach called Joe, uh, one of my a female, and another mentor as well. And I think this combination of having kind of a mentor and a coach, like mentor for like the business stuff and coach for like the life stuff, and having one man, one woman, and getting both of those experiences really helped me push against that wall that you talked about, in the sense of, okay, I have no proof right now that the way I want to do things doesn't work. So on the assumption that I don't have that proof, why have I told myself that because I'm not like Gary Vaynerchuk or some of these other, big, yeah, big deal social personalities, that my approach won't work? So then I just decided I'm going to try for until I get evidence that being me is not working to get to where I want to get to. I'm going to try that. And what I've realized is, actually, so far it's worked. Like, I don't, like, when I'm hiring people, I don't look at CVs. People think I'm crazy, but that's how I want to do stuff. And it's worked in the majority. I don't really shout or scream. In a lot of workplaces, you see like people who are like banging tables and that. It's not really my style. But so far, that's worked. It makes me feel good. It makes the people around me feel good. And I think as a man who may, from a societal point of view, is a lot about power and dominance and things like that, I have more of a subtle communication style, and it's worked for me. So I think it's just, in summary, having not had proof that my style didn't work, just try it until you feel like it doesn't.
And actually, what you're describing is very open, positive communication. So I think if
Mm,
anyone does that, you can teach this stuff to an extent, but if people don't absorb it, it's not going to work. So
yeah,
you have got this intrinsically, Nana, and you have got such a lovely way about you. And I know we've not met face to face, but yeah, I think that's right. And you're true to yourself.
yeah,
That's the key thing, isn't it?
yeah. That's 100% the key thing. I think I invested a lot of time in, yeah, understanding who I am and what I want, and starting to be unapologetic about the way in who I want to be, and the way that I want to do things. And very much about, growing up in an African family, not knowing a lot about mental health, actually, and investing time through my peers and people that I respect, and understanding how important that part of the journey is for me as well.
Yeah, thank you. And that brings me on to the next question, which is, what about mental ill health failure in culture? Because those of us
Mm,
from Black global majority diaspora backgrounds, which we both are, although, our stories are different,
mm,
we can't really feel like we can fail because, and I went to see Nish Kumar speak as part of
mhm,
this. He wasn't doing comedy. It was a Q&A session. And he said, look, there's a lot of stick about Asian parents wanting their children to be accountants, doctors, lawyers, etc. And he said, it's not that they're trying to kill our fun. It's
mm,
that they're terrified because we could at a minute's notice be told to leave, and we
mm,
need to make ourselves indispensable. That is the mindset. And I was like, yeah, that is so helpful to frame it that way.
mhm,
So we feel like we can't fail because actually it could be a matter of life and death. It's
mm.
very, very serious. So, but we also need to try things and know that they won't work out. So what are your thoughts about, from our collective cultures and communities, our global majority
Mm.
communities, how we can reframe this?
Yeah, no, it's a really, really interesting part of the conversation. I think for me, so I'm Ghanaian. My parents came to the UK in the 70s. They met here. My dad, worked three, four jobs at the same time, lots of different hours. My mum was a nurse, and I think with most parents, I would say, like, they just want their kids to do better than them, and make sure that they're okay and self-sufficient, etc. And that's how they understood that the way to do it is to kind of get a job, go to university, get a job, get married, have kids, buy a house, be secure. It was all about security. So it's all coming from in my opinion, a place of love. And, I remember having conversations with my parents about, oh, I don't enjoy this. And they're like, so, like, why do you need to enjoy it? All of that kind of stuff. But the way I frame it is, I'm fortunate enough, based on the sacrifices that my parents made, or the journey that my parents went on, that I'm in a position to be able to think about things they didn't have the luxury to think about. So having that perspective, and recognizing that it's important for us, as at least for me, from a first generation or second generation in this country, to take the best things that they have provided from what they know, and adapt what I have learned about myself and the environment that I'm in, and find ways for people who are from the diaspora, or, yeah, have a desire to break an approach that they felt like, or a path that they feel they need to go down, to actually explore these things. And I would say communicate with family members in a way where you can understand perspective, because there's still a lot to learn from every side. It's very much easier said than done, I will say. But yeah, I think with regards to example, things like mental health in at least in Black communities, I think it's getting a lot better. I think that it's been understood a lot more, and why it is so important to understand that part of living and working. But I would say the best thing we can do is really just to keep communicating and understanding perspectives, and not see it as, oh, they don't want me to be successful, or the culture has created this system. It's how can I take the good bits myself and bring it all together to improve my life.
That's a very helpful way to look at it. And I think often as well, the way we express things, we have to rethink that, don't we? Because
Mm,
our relatives might be trying to say something which we just don't understand, because we might be speaking the same language, but the way in which our syntax, the way in which we form the words, you have to
mm.
try and get underneath it and say, okay, what does that mean? Because I think often what happens is both sides are assuming.
Exactly, exactly. And I remember sitting my parents down when I wanted to quit my, very good corporate job, well paid, and saying I want to quit to start a music startup. And they were livid. They were like, oh no, and one of the things I learned later on was that they felt like, oh, they hadn't done a good job. That was the thinking. It was, oh, because, he's moving away from the security, which is what we think he needs to be okay. But then, once I was able to communicate that, actually what you've done is allow me to give me the confidence to know that if I do this and it doesn't work, I can go back into work. I'm still young. I've still got time if things don't work out. And I think it was, like you said, going underneath, going like a layer deeper to understand why they were so upset, and how to communicate that in a way that, look, this is the plan. Like, I'm not dismissing what you're saying, but this is the plan, and give me a shot. And it worked out in the end. Yeah.
Yeah. And how do they feel now?
Oh, they're very happy. It was all their idea. It was all their idea, of course. Yeah.
Always the way, isn't it? Oh, no, thank you for sharing that. And so I think when, entrepreneurs or anyone, if you're going for a job and you don't get it, or something goes wrong, in your career trajectory, or maybe you're applying for a career break and you don't get it.
Mhm.
What are the things that we, entrepreneurs, but anyone can do when they quote unquote fail or don't get their way in terms of their mental well-being? So how did you sort of look after yourself when you had those setbacks?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So first of all, I think when I had my first kind of mental health dip on the entrepreneurial journey, I didn't know that's what it was. So I think an important lesson to, going through that, was to really understand what was going on there, because I had a false expectation of how my journey would go, and it was going much slower, much clunkier, not doing the things that I expected. And a lot of that was societal, an impression that society was giving on me, that this is what the successful road looks like. And the way I actually sought that, well, first of all, I remember feeling really down for a few months in the early journey. I think it was speaking to friends who really understood what I was trying to achieve and why I was trying to do it, and people who, like I said before, were happy to want me to succeed, but at the same time loved me enough to not put myself in a position where they felt it was being really detrimental to my health. So one of those friends introduced me to a therapist, one of her therapists, and I started therapy basically, because I realized it's such a lonely journey, the entrepreneurial journey, and I didn't feel at that time I was being honest with anyone, not even myself. So being able to have someone who I at least gave me the energy that she was not going to judge anything that I said, it really helped deconstruct some of the concerns that I had. Was able to cry on some of the calls if it really felt like, it was really, really tough, and not feel judged for it at any point. And yeah, after a while, it really started to work, and I really started to get out of the funk that I was in, and come in with like a renewed energy. And then one of those key things that I was advised to do by her was to relook at my circle of people, and look at where is my energy going? And is that good for me and for what I'm trying to achieve in my own mental health? And once I had some difficult conversations with some people, I felt much freer, and I felt like I had the energy to put back into getting on track with the business. So yeah, I think that's the way that I kind of handled it. And what I would implore other entrepreneurs to do is definitely kind of check in with themselves. It's really hard to find the time, but try and do it, to check in with yourself to see like how are you doing basically. And secondly, I can't stress it enough. I think I've said it a few times, but the people that you have around you makes such a massive difference. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think, yeah, like you said, you don't know you're feeling low or unwell or not your optimum until something goes very, very wrong, or you just think, I can't do this, and then you
Yeah.
think, I need to get help. And thank you for being really open about getting therapy, and also saying, you stuck with it and eventually it started to work, because this is not a quick fix.
It's not
It
exactly.
takes time, and we have to rewire, and we know that there's neuroplasticity in our brain, and we can know it rationally, but often, again, as entrepreneurs, we go, come on now, is this not over? I need to get on with my work.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a double-edged sword sometimes. Like, we have to be tenacious, and we have to be, you know, almost delusional in a way about what we can achieve and when we can do it. But the flip side of that is, if things don't go the way that we want, it can really create issues. So yeah, I think definitely therapy helped. And I think also just having things that aren't work as well, because I'm so passionate about what I do, and like it's fun at the same time. Though it's hard, it's fun. Like, I need things that I don't it's not a competition for me, or like it's just something that I can just do to get my brain off kind of the real world. And I think that really helps as well, knowing what that is and finding time to do it.
Brilliant. And any other mental health tips? So you've said one, but how you look after your mental health now. And I know you just shared
Mhm.
that you've had a son.
Yes.
So yeah, any other tips? I normally say to people, what are your top 3 tips for looking after your mental well-being?
Yeah, so definitely, yeah, finding those things that make you feel good, and finding time to do that. I think investing in understanding yourself as well, and recognizing that that's not going to be the same all the time. Like a personality test, or understanding, doing some reading, your personality evolves over time as well. So I'd say recognizing that. And I think the third thing is probably, as I kind of mentioned again, your circle of people. Like, look into that, and make sure that you're giving to them and they're giving to you, and it's reciprocated, and you feel generally good as a result. I'd say those are probably my 3 tips. And sorry, obvious one, which I've only recently just started, is like good eating and physical health as well, and doing that as much as you can.
Brilliant, thank you. I was surprised to hear you say good eating, only because, our Ghanaian food is one of my favorites, and the
Oh
food is
yeah, and
so good.
it's so good and so bad for you. But it is so good. Yeah, got to do those on the cheat days.
So if people want to know more, Nana, thank you so much for, being so open and sharing and giving your time. People want to know more about your work. How should they contact you and get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can contact me on LinkedIn under Nana Parry. Also, you can drop me an email at nana@tectoniclondon.com. Always happy to talk about anything entrepreneurial and anything mental health related, or anything about how we can, as a group of people, kind of achieve our goals.
Amazing. And I will, of course, include those in the show notes. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you again, Nana. And join us next week, where we'll be celebrating the 200th episode of the Diverse Minds podcast. Until then, everyone, take care. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you access your podcasts from. You can also connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Tune into next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll bring you more insights on mental health and inclusion. Bye for now.